1984 by George Orwell. Chapter 1. The World of Oceania. Winston Smith lived in a dark and miserable city called London, which was the capital of Airstrip 1. This province was part of Oceania, a massive totalitarian state completely controlled by the mysterious and powerful party. Everywhere Winston looked, he saw giant posters of a man with a heavy black mustache looking down at him. The terrifying caption under these large portraits always warned citizens that Big Brother was watching them at all times. In every room and public space, two-way devices called telescreens broadcasted endless government propaganda without any pause. These advanced machines simultaneously monitored everyone's daily actions, ensuring that nobody could ever hide from the authorities. There was absolutely no privacy left in this frightening society, and independent thought was considered the greatest crime. The streets were patrolled by ruthless guards, but the real danger came from the dreaded thought police. These secret agents could arrest anyone who showed even the slightest sign of rebellion or unhappiness. Children were encouraged to spy on their own parents, creating an atmosphere of constant fear and deep suspicion. Citizens wore blue overalls as a uniform, removing any sense of individuality or personal expression from their lives. The party dictated not only what people did, but also what they were allowed to feel and believe. Winston worked in the Ministry of Truth, an enormous white pyramid rising high above the ruined, dirty city. The massive building contained thousands of rooms, twisting corridors, and endless pneumatic tubes for sending secret messages. His daily job was to rewrite historical records to make sure the party's predictions were always perfectly correct. He spent hours changing old newspaper articles, altering photographs, and deleting the names of arrested citizens. If a person was executed by the state, Winston had to remove their existence from all published books. These erased people became unpersons, meaning they legally never existed in the entire history of the world. Although Winston was very good at his job, he secretly hated the cruel system he served every single day. He possessed a sharp memory, which made it impossible for him to truly forget the real, unaltered past. He quietly dreamed of a time when people could speak freely and share their true feelings without fear. However, hiding his rebellious thoughts required constant mental effort and extreme physical control of his facial expressions. A simple sigh, a nervous twitch, or an unusual look could easily betray his hatred for the regime. Deep down, he knew that he was walking on a very dangerous path that would eventually lead to his death. Chapter 2. The Forbidden Diary. One evening, Winston wandered into a poor neighborhood where the ordinary working-class people, called the proles, lived. The party mostly ignored the proles, believing they were too uneducated and simple to ever start a real revolution. He visited a small, dusty antique shop, filled with useless but fascinating objects from the forgotten past. There, he secretly purchased a beautiful old-fashioned notebook with smooth cream paper and a real ink pen. Buying such an item was strictly forbidden, but he desperately wanted to record his true, unfiltered thoughts. He returned to his small apartment and sat down in a tiny corner, hidden from the telescreen's view. With a trembling hand, Winston opened the diary and began to write down his deepest, darkest secrets. He wrote about his intense hatred for Big Brother and the oppressive party that ruined their daily lives. By committing this dangerous thought crime, he knew the thought police would eventually catch and kill him without mercy. The act of writing felt incredibly liberating, allowing him to finally express the anger buried inside his mind. He wanted to leave a record of the truth for future generations. even if they never found the book. Leaving the diary open on his desk was a fatal mistake, but he felt he had already crossed the line. At his workplace, Winston noticed a young, dark-haired woman watching him carefully in the narrow, crowded corridors. Her name was Julia, and she wore the tight red sash of the Junior Anti-Sex League around her waist. Winston was terrified of her, strongly believing she was an enthusiastic spy, eager to report his unusual behavior. He thought she had noticed his rebellious attitude and was preparing to hand him over to the authorities. The constant paranoia slowly destroyed his nerves, making him suspect everyone around him of being a secret government agent. He felt completely isolated, convinced that he was the only sane person left in the entire ruined country. Winston's fear of Julia grew stronger every time he saw her observing him in the ministry cafeteria. He even imagined violent ways to silence her before she could report him to the terrifying thought police. The psychological pressure of living a double life made his daily routine exhausting and almost impossible to manage. He started drinking large amounts of cheap Victory gin just to numb his constant anxiety and physical pain. Every time a door knocked or a telescreen beeped, his heart raced with absolute, paralyzing terror. He lived every single day, believing it would be his last moments as a free, independent human being. Chapter 3. A Secret Love. The terrifying situation completely changed one morning when Winston and Julia passed each other in a bright hallway. The young woman suddenly fell down, pretending to injure her arm on the hard, cold stone floor. When Winston quickly helped her up, she secretly slipped a small, folded piece of paper into his hand. When he finally found a safe place to open the note, he was shocked to read the words, "I love you." He could hardly believe his eyes, as romantic love was strictly forbidden by the party's harsh, emotionless laws. The sudden realization that he was not completely alone in his rebellion filled him with a desperate, wild hope. They carefully arranged a secret meeting in the countryside, traveling far away from the city's hidden microphones. In the peaceful green forest, Julia revealed that she hated the party just as much as Winston did. She explained that her strict loyalty to the rules was merely a clever disguise to hide her rebellious spirit. Unlike Winston, she did not care about changing history. She only wanted to break the rules and enjoy life. Their first kiss was a deliberate political act, a powerful strike against the party's control over human emotions. For the first time in his miserable life, Winston felt a genuine connection with another living person. The two lovers began a dangerous and passionate affair, defying the strict laws of their terrible society. They eventually rented a hidden room above the antique shop where Winston had previously bought his forbidden diary. Mr. Charrington, the old shop owner, seemed like a kind and harmless man who respected their need for privacy. This dusty room felt like a perfect sanctuary, because it apparently had no telescreens on the old, faded walls. Together, they enjoyed rare luxuries like real coffee, sweet sugar, and high-quality chocolate bought on the black market. For a few wonderful months, Winston finally experienced genuine happiness and felt like a normal, free human being. Inside their secret room, Winston and Julia created a beautiful, temporary paradise away from the party's watchful eyes. They spent hours talking about their childhoods, their hidden dreams, and their mutual hatred for Big Brother. Winston even read his forbidden diary to her, sharing his deepest thoughts without any fear of betrayal. However, they both knew deep down that their fragile happiness could not last forever in such a ruthless world. They frequently discussed the inevitable moment when the thought police would finally come to arrest and torture them. Despite the looming danger, they promised each other that they would never let the party destroy their true love. Chapter 4. The Brotherhood. Seeking a way to actively fight the system, Winston and Julia visited a powerful inner party member named O'Brien. Winston had always suspected that O'Brien secretly belonged to a legendary underground resistance group known as the Brotherhood. During their tense meeting in his luxurious apartment, O'Brien turned off his telescreen, which shocked the two lovers. He confirmed their hopes and warmly welcomed them into the dangerous, highly secretive rebellion against the totalitarian state. He promised to send them a forbidden book that explained the deep, hidden mechanisms of the party's global control. The lovers felt incredibly empowered, believing they were finally part of a larger movement that could change the future. A few days later, Winston received the mysterious book written by Emmanuel Goldstein, the ultimate enemy of the party. He took it straight to the secret room above the antique shop and began reading it aloud to Julia. The book explained how the government maintained power through continuous war, artificial poverty, and the absolute control of reality. It confirmed everything Winston had already guessed, but it did not provide a real plan to defeat the party. Julia fell asleep while he was reading, completely uninterested in the complex political theories and historical explanations. Winston gently closed the book, feeling peacefully satisfied that he was finally understanding the true nature of their world. Unfortunately, their hopeful dreams of a political revolution were suddenly and violently crushed that very same evening. A cold, metallic voice suddenly echoed through their safe room, repeating the exact words they had just spoken. To their absolute horror, they discovered a hidden telescreen perfectly disguised behind an old painting on the wall. They realized that their entire sanctuary had been a carefully planned trap from the very beginning of their affair. Heavily armed guards smashed through the wooden door, beating Winston and Julia without any mercy or hesitation. The couple was completely surrounded, with no possible way to escape the brutal grip of the terrifying authorities. The friendly antique shop owner, Mr. Charrington, entered the room, looking completely different and much younger. He revealed himself as a high-ranking, cruel officer of the thought police who had been watching them for months. He coldly ordered the aggressive guards to take the prisoners away to different locations within the city. Winston desperately tried to reach out to Julia, but a heavy boot slammed into his chest, knocking him down. The lovers were brutally separated and dragged away to the terrifying Ministry of Love for endless, painful interrogations. Winston's darkest nightmare had finally become a reality, and he knew his life as a free man was permanently over. Chapter 5. Room 101. Inside the windowless Ministry of Love, Winston suffered through unimaginable physical and psychological torture for many agonizing weeks. He was brutally beaten, starved, and constantly questioned under bright, blinding lights that never turned off. The greatest shock came when his chief torturer turned out to be O'Brien, the man he had trusted completely. O'Brien calmly explained that the Brotherhood was merely a clever trap designed to catch potential rebels like Winston. The party did not just want to punish its enemies, it wanted to completely cure them of independent thought. O'Brien wanted to break Winston's mind and rebuild it, forcing him to love the system he once hated. The torture sessions were designed to destroy Winston's ability to reason, think logically, or trust his own memories. O'Brien used painful electric shocks to force Winston to accept the party's insane concept of changing reality. He made the prisoner believe that 2 + 2 could equal 5 if the government commanded it to be so. Winston endured terrible pain, yet he desperately held on to his pure love for Julia as his last remaining humanity. He stubbornly refused to betray his feelings for her, proving that the party had not yet broken his spirit. He believed that as long as he loved her, he would always win a small moral victory against his captors. Realizing that Winston still possessed a sliver of humanity, O'Brien sent him to the dreaded room 101. In this horrible, infamous place, prisoners were forced to face their absolute worst, most paralyzing personal fears. O'Brien knew from Winston's secret records that the rebellious man was completely terrified of large, aggressive rats. He brought a rusty wire cage filled with starving rodents and slowly pushed it toward Winston's trapped face. The terrifying mechanical mask was designed to open, allowing the hungry animals to eat his face completely alive. Overwhelmed by blind, animalistic terror, Winston's mind finally shattered into a million tiny, irreparable pieces. In his absolute panic, Winston completely snapped and frantically begged them to torture Julia instead of him. By offering up the woman he loved, he successfully destroyed his own soul and surrendered his final piece of freedom. The betrayal was absolute, erasing his last human emotion and leaving him as an empty shell of a man. The party had finally won the long battle, successfully curing him of his rebellious thoughts and dangerous individuality. Months later, a broken and empty Winston sat alone in a dusty cafe, drinking cheap gin and crying softly. He looked up at a giant poster on the wall and realized that he truly loved Big Brother.